Well, listen, we got a report today that shows that the economy continues to move forward. We continue to add jobs at a healthy pace. And importantly, we continue to see a healthy pace of wage gains for workers across the economy, including faster wage gains for the 80% of workers who are production and non-supervisory employees. So, we have a few other bright spots from today's reports. Again, yet another historic rise in the labor force participation rate of prime age women. Labor force participation still looking quite strong, quite robust. So there's a lot of indications that this is an economy that has really reached its cruising speed, that we are moving forward, continuing apace, and a job market that continues to perform.
Well, if it's reached cruising speed, it does raise the question of whether or not the current rate of policy is what is appropriate. I won't ask you to weigh in on the actual decision the Fed will make in a few weeks' time, Heather, from your position at the White House. I just wonder if we see a sudden easing in policy, if you worry that may actually send a signal that the economy is in a more dire strait than you think it is, especially with an election just around the corner.
Well, again, I will not comment on Fed policy, but we all watch all of these different kinds of data so closely. And I think, one of the things that we continue to see is that the economy does continue to move forward at a healthy pace. We have good data on, GDP growth and output. We continue to see strong consumer spending. We have seen, of course, inflation come back down. And then alongside this, we have this ongoing steady pace of job gains in the economy that continue to be associated with a healthy pace of wage gains. So when you put all of the data together, you really do have an economy that is, I'm just going to keep saying it, we've hit our cruising speed and, are moving along at a healthy pace.
I want to ask you about the revisions, Heather, and how we should read into this. 86,000 downward revision for June and July. Adding to the idea that things might be softer than the headline suggests, should we anticipate a revision for August? And how much of this has to do with funding at BLS to get these numbers right?
Well, revisions are a part of the process. They get their data in and they revise it as they get more real-time data in from firms so that it's more accurate over time. And that is an important part. It does require that they have the resources to do the job that they need to do. Data quality, we've seen over the course of this economic recovery how imperative it is that we have access to good quality data. Listen, though, again, we saw job gains of 142,000 per month last month in August. We've seen, a steady pace even with revisions of 116,000 per month over the past 3 months. We believe that that is about what we need to keep pace with the increase in the labor supply. So, even with revisions, this does look like a healthy job market, and we continue to learn, as the months go on, what the data tell us.
Well, and of course, the job market isn't monolithic. There are many different components of it that you could look at. Heather, specifically what's caught our attention in recent months is manufacturing, where a sector in which we're seeing a bit more weakness. What exactly is happening with the employment picture you see in the manufacturing sector?
Well, certainly you have seen that flatlined, and you did lose some jobs last month. One of the things that we have been focusing on in the Invest in America agenda is how the president's agenda is revitalizing parts of American manufacturing through the construction at this point of new manufacturing facilities, which we're seeing all across the country. And so we've been actually watching very carefully the increase in construction employment that you've seen, and you actually saw a big uptick in that last month. We believe that, as you build those facilities, those workers will come into these new sectors that we are building out. But, for now, we are seeing this flattening in the employment in manufacturing.
There's been a lot of talk about U.S. Steel this week, Heather. I don't know if this is something that you helped to advise the president on, but now you've got Joe Biden, along with the two presidential candidates, opposing this acquisition by Japan's Nippon Steel. It was reporting this week that President Biden was preparing imminently to formally block that deal. Is that about to happen?
That is not something I can speak to today.
Well, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about this proposal at all, but there have been questions about whether, if this deal wins support, for instance, from the United Steelworkers Union, if that might change the look of this arrangement. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, listen, to sort of zoom out to the big picture here, the president has been focused, and the vice president, from day one, on making sure that we have the economic sectors in our economy, across our economy, that are vital to our national and economic security. And the president's been focused on making sure that we're making those investments, that we're making sure to create good jobs as we do so. And I think that he is taking on these decisions in light of those overarching goals.